And good day, everybody. This is Z Marcel Portut, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're recording this on December 30th, 2019. This may possibly be our last show of the 2019 calendar year, so we got a lot going on the broadcast today. We're going to recap the last week of the regular season in the NFL with our Gridiron Blitz and give a little bit of a preview of the upcoming playoffs. We'll break down the college football bowl season to date, including the Fiesta Bowl and the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which took place this past weekend. We'll break down those games. And we may go into other miscellaneous news and notes in the world of sports as we roll on through the show. As always, if you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to thesportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. We have exclusive interviews with Terry Thomas, Hunter Atkinson, Dan Ellington, and head coach of Georgia State football, Shawn Elliott, on our site. So make sure you head to there. We're going to play some clips from those interviews during our show when we get to the bowl recaps. And make sure you head to the site to get those full interviews. And make sure you head there as well to get everything from the Atlanta Hawks to Georgia Tech athletics. Over this next week, we're going to bring back the Verbal Submission podcast. We're going to preview the New Japan wrestling shows that are coming up this weekend, as well as look at the past year in professional wrestling and mixed martial arts in general. So that show will be up later on this week, so make sure you head to the Inquirer to check all of that out. Our social media platforms, go to Twitter and Instagram under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. Make sure you go there, subscribe, and you'll get all of our up-to-date content. Facebook, you go to our pages, The Sports Inquirer, those separate words, and Sports Inquirer, that's one word. Make sure you go to there to get the same up-to-date content as far as our social media. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. You head to those pages, you'll get our exclusive audio and video content from the site on there, as well as iTunes, and you'll get everything that we are doing. It's been a pretty good week for us so far. A little bit of a time off. We had some time off during the Christmas holiday. Hopefully all of you out there had a good holiday season, whether you celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa is taking place right now. New Year's coming up in a few days, or if you don't celebrate the holidays, hope you've had a good December. So as far as our show recordings, it's been pretty slow in that regard. Had to wrap up some stuff with my regular job, and this is my job too, but I'll have another job situation. So a lot of year-end stuff there. I had to take care of that. But we've caught up on a lot of those things, and now we're getting ready to head into 2020 in the new decade. And I saw someone talk about whether it's a new decade or not. I'm not really sure about that. I guess technically, if you consider the decade from 2010 to 2019, that's one decade. Then 2020 starts a new decade. Or I guess it could be from 2011 to 2020. So I'm trying to figure out what this decade thing is. But if you have any thoughts on that and can give me an explanation, and the rest of our listeners, shoot us an email at you can choose an email. Yeah, I always forget about that. We have several email accounts. We have mportute@gmail.com or sportsinquirer@gmail.com. Send us an email to either one of those platforms, and that'll be a great way to communicate with us and help me figure out if we're going into a new decade or if we're still in the previous decade. And if I don't know if we even figured out if we're in the teens, because if you say the teens, is that the 1910 or even 1810? If you are a historian, we need an explanation of all that stuff. But before we get to that and maybe figure it out, we're going to move on with our show and take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to break down the NFL Week 17 with our Gridiron Blitz here on the Sports Inquirer Show. Hey, all right, welcome back to the show, Sports Inquirer, here recording this on December 30th, 2019. I'm just laughing because I happen to be watching one of the... And another thing we've had over the past weeks has been home a lot more because things do slow down in the holiday season. I've actually been home, not working as much, and watching the debate shows. And I'm watching the debate show right now, and I don't want to highlight one in particular, but just the entertainment value of these is tremendous. Not much journalism going into it, and they're not breaking down some little-known facts or great analysis, but if you just want to watch people yelling at each other or getting very dramatical, it is high entertainment. So I was just laughing at one of the guys breaking down the Antonio Brown workout with the Saints, and he just had a very funny approach to it. But we might get to Antonio Brown at the very end of the Gridiron Blitz, but we're going to focus on what happened in the Week 17 of the NFL season. And I want to start off with a major overarching fact. Now, we've talked about previously on the show, but now that the season has concluded, we can discuss it. There's been so much turnover with teams successful last season at being playoff type squads and not being successful this year. You can start with Dallas as a prime example of that, and a few others. Chicago, those teams aren't even in the playoffs, and last year were in the postseason. Similar deal with the Los Angeles Rams. They made the Super Bowl last season and didn't even qualify for the playoffs this year. But 5 of the 12 teams to qualify for the playoffs this year are new in 2019 after missing the playoffs last year. Buffalo, Green Bay, Minnesota, San Francisco, and Tennessee. So since 1990, so that's going back 30 consecutive years, at least 4 teams have qualified for the playoffs in every season that were not in the postseason the year before. So it just continues the overarching theme of if you can put together a decent team, you get some good luck health wise, and you make them some right moves, you could be a playoff squad after missing it the previous year. Now, maybe the only sport in basketball is an exception because sometimes you can get 1 or 2 big free agent signings. You draft a really good player, and you can go from worst to close to first in a very quick turnaround. But as far as you look at baseball, it takes a lot for that to happen. And then other sports, it takes a lot for that to develop. But football, it can happen. And that's why you always look at some franchises, and we'll get to them at the end of the Gridiron Blitz when we talk about the hirings and firings. There's some franchises that just cannot get it together. And it's surprising and disappointing when you learn and you see that specific stat that I just gave earlier. But let's look at the AFC playoff picture first. We'll look at the wild card games. The first one's going to be New England hosting Tennessee. New England really cost themselves in a major way, blowing that contest to Miami 27-24. Now, Tom Brady did throw 2 TD passes and an interception in that contest, so he now has 541 career touchdown passes. So he surpassed Peyton Manning for second most of all time. He only trails Drew Brees by 6 touchdowns. But you look at that contest, New England, they just could not get away from the Dolphins multiple times during that contest. New England looked like they could take advantage of the situation, even took the lead once or twice, but just could not hold on to a lead. Brady, I have my notes. The Patriots looked old, especially Brady. I think it's a worn-down squad. Now, they still won a division, and they're still a 3rd seed in the playoffs, so it's not like they're an awful team. But you just look at all of the losses that they've had against decent teams. Kansas City, they looked bad. Against Houston, they struggled. So you look at the teams that they're facing. They're Baltimore, they lost in Baltimore. All of these losses, you have a defense that, beginning of the season, when the schedule was below average, looked tremendous, putting up some record-setting numbers. But second half of the year, you're starting to see them break down a little bit more. And you got to look at the offense as well. They've given up 17 or more points, I think, in 3 contests this year, and they've lost all 3 of them. The offense has not been able to step up. I think Brady, I don't think his arm is right. We've seen during the press conferences with the ice on the elbow. Julian Edelman, we hear that he's having shoulder issues and may need surgery and things like that. Obviously, the Antonio Brown situation, they brought him in for 1 week, then they released him. They lost that offensive threat, Gronkowski's retirement. I think all of this coming together leaves the Patriots very vulnerable in this postseason. And Tennessee's a team that can maybe do some damage to them in that wild card game. The Titans were able to defeat Houston 35-14. Derrick Henry won the rushing title. First running back that won the Heisman to win a rushing title since Ricky Williams about 15 years ago. So just a really interesting statistic there. A.J. Brown, big offensive threat for the Titans, had a 51-yard TD reception, and I thought that really blew the game open for the Titans. He now has 4 touchdown catches of at least 50 yards or more this year. He joins Isaac Curtis and Willie Gaultz and Randy Moss as rookies with at least 4 TD receptions, 50 yards or more since 1970. So he's been a tremendous rookie impact player for the Titans. And you look at the contest, and we'll do our show later. Next show, we'll preview this contest more specifically. But I think New England will win the game. But the Titans are going to have an offensive strategy where they're going to run the ball with Henry as the rushing champion. Ryan Tannehill's been very competent for the Titans, play action passes, getting the ball down the field on A.J. Brown. And that's where I think the Titans are going to give the Patriots a lot of trouble. I would take the Patriots to win the game right now, but I think the Super Bowl road, you got to look at it this way. If they beat Tennessee, next up is most likely a trip to Kansas City. And then if they win that game, they got to go to Baltimore, and that's just to make it to the Super Bowl. And if they make the Super Bowl, they got to deal with all those NFC teams, which I think are all better. At least the top 3 or 4 NFC teams are better than New England. So it's a very tough road for New England to get to the Super Bowl, let alone win it. And that loss really cost them because they would have had to bye. And I think that would have helped. And you got a home game as well. You get a home game in the conference semifinals. That would have been a major help for New England in their quest to repeat a Super Bowl champion. Houston is going to host Buffalo in the other AFC wildcard game this upcoming weekend. Bills lost to the Jets 13-12 in a meaningless game in the standings. We talked about the Houston game. They were a similar position against Tennessee. So both teams were resting their guys, knowing that they're going to play on wild card weekend. Interesting contest here. You got to figure Houston is the favorite, being at home. I think they have a better quarterback, even though Josh Allen has made some strong strides in his second year in the NFL. But I think with Deshaun Watson and Hopkins as an offensive threat and Fuller, you got to figure that the Texans will be the favorite in that contest. But Buffalo's made the postseason for the second consecutive year. I want to say their second time in 3 years. Tremendous situation for the Bills, who before that didn't make the playoffs in more than 15 years. So the Bills, they're a live dog in that contest. But I think Houston will come out with that. And the byes go to Baltimore. They're the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. They defeated Pittsburgh 28-10. And Kansas City were able to defeat the LA Chargers 31-21. So those two teams have a bye, and we'll see what they do in the next round. The Ravens were able to set that record for most rushing yards as a team in NFL history. They finished with 3,296 rushing yards, surpassing the 1978 New England Patriots. And they did that without Mark Ingram or Lamar Jackson playing in that final game against the Steelers. So respectable accomplishment by the Ravens in that victory. Move on to the NFC playoff picture. Wow, there's a lot. This really went down to the final game of the regular season with Seattle and San Francisco. But let's go to the wild card games first that are going to take place this upcoming weekend. Philadelphia is going to host Seattle in the wild card. Philadelphia able to defeat the New York Giants 34-17, able to secure the NFC East title. And you've seen the evolution of Carson Wentz over the past month. The Eagles had to win out to make the playoffs and win the division, win their final 4 games, and you saw that despite Wentz not having his Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Ertz being in and out of the lineup, he has found a way to get the offense going and to find ways to win. Now, there have been some interesting contests. You had the overtime win against the Giants at home. That shouldn't have gone to overtime, but it did. But they got the win. Last week, they were able to defeat the Cowboys at home to give themselves a leg up in the division race. And they finally secured it with the Giants victory. So you're seeing a team win these crucial divisional games to get victories. And they host a Seattle team that I think really cost itself similar to New England with their loss. If you saw the game last night, Seattle really had control of the 49ers had a lot of control of that contest, but Seattle were down 5, driving down the field. You saw them have a first and goal situation at the 1-yard line. We all expected Marshawn Lynch, who just re-signed with the team, to get the ball and drive it in. Had a delay a game penalty, trying to be fancy with their substitutions, and then you saw multiple passing attempts not go right. On 3rd down, there was a pass, should have been a pass interference, I believe, which would have at least given them a first and goal with about 13 seconds left, or even a holding would have been half this distance to the goal. They didn't get the call. It wasn't reviewed by New York, by the NFL. Very surprised by that. But then you get 4th down, Wilson with the pass, just short of the goal line, short of the end zone, and San Francisco was able to get the victory. I think that may have been we're going to look back on that as one of the more significant, impactful games in the NFL this season, at least in the regular season, because it affected 4 teams in essence. With that San Francisco win, the 49ers secured the number 1 overall seed and got a bye. Green Bay also got a bye with that victory. The Packers were able to defeat Detroit 23-20, secure the NFC North, and that happened. Seattle, instead of winning the game and hosting the wild card game, have to travel across the country against a hot Philadelphia team that we've just discussed. New Orleans went from being a potential number 1 overall seed if Seattle won to now hosting Minnesota in the wild card round. So you had all of those teams affected just by that final drive. And I'll say this, I think Seattle's the better team, but that was a really tough, that's Philadelphia, but that was a really tough loss. They got to travel across the country. And we've stated before, I don't mind the team winning the division, making the playoffs, but if the wild card team has a better overall record, they should host the game instead of the division winner. So in this situation, it would be Philadelphia going to Seattle. So I think if you win the division, I don't mind you making the playoffs in that regard, but to host a game with the worst record, I don't like the situation at all. But those are the rules, and that's what we're going to see right there. And as to the other wild card game, we touched on it a little bit. New Orleans, as I said, they defeated the Panthers they already won the NFC South, but they were able to end the season on a high note. They're going to host Minnesota, who lost to Chicago 21-19. Now, Minnesota was kind of a similar situation. They knew that they weren't going to win the division, and they knew they were going to be playing in the wild card round, so they rested a good amount of guys there. Both teams play indoors, so you can't use weather as an element. I think New Orleans is the better team, and you have to question Kirk Cousins in playoff scenarios. We already know that he's never won a Monday Night Football game, so he's 0-9 in that regard. And this is the equivalent of a Monday Night Football game in the postseason. So we'll see what happens there. Now, the bias, as I said, Green Bay does get the number 2 seed, and they're going to be a very interesting opponent to be right there for a Super Bowl. And San Francisco, as I said, they were able to win their game against the Seattle Seahawks to get the number 1 overall seed. And I think that makes them the Super Bowl favorite to come out of the NFC. Not only did they get a bye, they have 2 games at home with that tremendous defense. And I know Seattle beat them in San Francisco earlier in the year. But outside of that, the 49ers, and I know the Rams gave them a good run at home. But I think with the 49ers, what you're going to see is a team that's going to be rested, and they need a break, and they're going to get that. And overall, that's going to help them out in a big way. Now, I have to mention Drew Brees in the contest. He threw, it was his 4th consecutive game with at least 3 touchdown passes and no picks. So he joins Russell Wilson and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers as the only players with at least 4 consecutive games of 3 TDs and no picks in a single season. And Brees also finished the year with a 74.3 completion percentage, which is second highest single season completion percentage in NFL history, trailing only the mark that he set last year. So the past 2 years, he set the 2 highest completion percentages in the history of the league. So the man is setting records even as he approaches 40. We're going to look at some other news and notes in the world of the NFL as we conclude this portion of the show. We got a lot of notes because we got to do some year-end stuff. I'll start this one. I look back at the quarterback class draft of 2014, at least the first round, or 2004, and it's on its last legs. First, you have Eli Manning, who was the first overall pick in the draft. He played his final game for the New York Giants. We saw him a few weeks ago get a home win, and that was kind of like his swan song, got his career record back to 500. But he's won 2 Super Bowl championships with the New York Giants. Tremendous career for him, but it's heading towards the end of the line for him, not only in New York, maybe for his career. That will be a discussion for another day. Phillip Rivers, it looked like his final game playing for the LA Chargers. This was his final year of his deal. He's a free agent. I think the Chargers are going to want to move in a different direction. And you heard Rivers post-game just talking emotionally about his time with the team and what he's played for. I think you're looking at him, and I think he saw some football left in him, but I just don't think it's going to be with the Chargers. They have a top 5 pick upcoming in the NFL season, or NFL draft. So they're probably going to pick a quarterback and try to go that direction. Or they may resign him to a 1-year deal. But the thing is, the long-term deal with the Chargers days probably over for Rivers there. And Ben Roethlisberger, who's also a top 15 pick in that draft, he was out after the second week of the season with an elbow injury. He says he wants to come back and play again. I think the Steelers will give him a chance to play with them because you look at the alternatives of Randolph and Duck Hodges. Those aren't good alternatives. So I think in the end you're going to see him play again for the Steelers. But you have to figure he's another guy who is at an advanced age, and it's going to be time for the Steelers to eventually look to move on and find another guy. But we're just seeing a class, 3 potential Hall of Famers. I think Roethlisberger's definitely one, and then Rivers and Manning are interesting debates. But to have a class of 3 guys all drafted in the same year, have their strong and long careers playing all with one team, that's the last time we're going to see that happen, at least for this class. And so you got to acknowledge that. So you move on to the kind of the past and the present of the quarterbacks, and you got to look at the future with the rookie runs of Daniel Jones with the Giants, Gardner Minshew with the Jaguars, and Kyler Murray with the Cardinals. All 3 of those guys threw for at least 20 touchdown passes this season. It's only the second time we've seen that in NFL history. In 2012, we had Robert Griffin III, Andrew Luck, and Russell Wilson throw for 20 or more touchdowns. Jones finished with the most of all the rookies with 24 TDs, and that's the fourth most by a rookie quarterback in a single season. Only Baker Mayfield, Peyton Manning, and Russell Wilson had more in their first seasons. And then Kyler Murray finished with 3,722 yards and rushed 544 yards this year. So he's only Cam Newton in 2011 threw for more than 3,500 and had 500 or more rushing yards in a single season as a rookie. So you look at the past with that draft class 2004, and you look at the draft class of 2019. So it's kind of the passing of the torch in that regard. And literally with the Giants, with Eli Manning, and with Daniel Jones. Christian McCaffrey, who was my all-pro running back and really should be top 5 MVP finisher, he set another strong game in that Saints loss. 7 catches and 98 scrimmage yards and a rushing TD as well. He finished the year with 2,392 scrimmage yards, third most in NFL history behind Chris Johnson and Marshall Faulk. He also had more than 1,000 rushing yards and receiving yards. So he joins Roger Craig, who did in 1985, and Marshall Faulk in 1999 as the only players to record more than 1,000 rushing and receiving yards in a single season. And he already has 303 receptions through his first 3 years in the NFL. Only Michael Thomas, a receiver, who set the catch mark for a single season last week, he has 321 catches in his career. Those are only players with at least 300 receptions in the first 3 years of their career, through the first 3 years. So McCaffrey was a running back. Having those numbers, tremendous effort by him. Jameis Winston set interesting marks this year. Led the league in passing yards, 5,109. Could be the 8th different quarterback to reach 5,000 yards in a single season. And also joined the elusive 30-30 club. 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. I think that's a mark that may not be broken for a very, very long time. And he ended the season on I don't say a high note or a low note, but a typical Jameis Winston note. First play of overtime against the Falcons, pick 6 to Deion Jones. And it was like the fitting ending for both of those teams. Now we can move on to the hirings and firings or the retainings. And since we talk about the Falcons, we're bringing it up right now. And it happened since we did our last show. Literally, let's see, we're recording this on December 30th, so the 27th, I'll get the dates right. We're home. Yeah, it's 27th. We're at our house, just going over, basic stuff. I get the email that the Falcons have retained Thomas Dimitroff, the general manager, Dan Quinn, the head coach, and have moved the position of Rich McKay to be their supervisor. My first thought was, what a shady way to announce this. For those not familiar with the way public relations works and the news cycle, and if you're not into sports, you see it in politics, you see it in entertainment, whatever interest that you have, always release a story on a Friday if you want the least amount of attention. if you want to just go fly under the radar. And that's what they did by making that announcement. You literally had the media of the sports media either covering the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in Atlanta, which we had here this Saturday, or some of them were already in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl, which the Georgia football team is playing in, and half people are on vacation. So if you work in the NFL media, you already know that the big day is today, Black Friday. A lot of players get cut, coaches get fired, and general managers get fired. Some even hirings. We'll get to one potential hiring that took place today already in the cycle. So to release it on a Friday, I thought was a shady move by the Falcons to not acknowledge and not have the gumption to face the media. They call a last-minute press conference that not many people were able to make it to because, as I said, people were covering all these different events. Instead of having a press conference today where people will be able to go to and ask questions and things like that, they do it on a Friday. You have Arthur Blank, the owner, making just general statements. In essence, he's looking at the last 8 games of the regular season where the team went 6-2, and ignoring the fact that the team started 1-7, ignoring the fact that the team is in multiple 5 to 6 game losing streaks throughout Dan Quinn's tenure, ignoring the fact that since that Super Bowl run, the team has been around 500. Ignoring the fact that they blew a 28-3 lead in said Super Bowl. Ignoring the fact that you had Dan Quinn take on the role of the defensive coordinator and the team literally have the worst defense in the NFL. And during that time, starting the year 1-7. And ignoring all of this stuff, he retains Dan Quinn and retains Thomas Dimitroff. Ignoring the fact that the drafts have been below average the past few years. Ignoring the fact that they signed Michael Beasley to a 1-year tender, had an 8-sack campaign, and paid him close to $12 to $13 million when they could have walked away from it and used that money to different allocations. Ignoring the fact that they've had average to below average retainments of Devonta Freeman, the running back, Desmond Trufant, the defensive back. So you look at all of those factors, yet you re-sign or you keep these guys under contract. And I'll say it again, ignoring the fact that you have a half-empty stadium with a fan base that's disenchanted and frustrated by the direction of the team. The fans are savvy. They're smart now. They know the statistics. I look up all this stuff. I get it literally sent to me. Gone are the days of the 70s and 80s where you have these, or even the 90s, where you have these loyal fans blind to their fandom and not acknowledging the team and the lack of direction that it's going. I thought it was a disingenuous move to bring him back in that regard. And another fact with this, he mentioned, and this is words directly from Arthur Blank, who's been a very good owner, provided a lot of support for the team financially, built the new stadium. So he's not a bad owner. I think in this situation, he made a bad move. There's a difference. And I think people are tough, they don't want to criticize Arthur Blank because they think they criticize this move, they criticize the man. No, it's different. This is business. You look at the fact that he said that the players play hard for Dan Quinn and for the coaching staff. And you hear the players as well talk about how they're happy that Quinn is back and that they are going to play hard for him. Did they play hard for him the first 8 games of the year when they were 1-7 and lost to inferior teams such as Tennessee, who had Marcus Mariota have his career game against them? He's not even starting for the Titans right now. Or when you give up 50 points at Houston, or you lose in uninspired fashion at Minnesota? Was you with them or when you have all of these when you lose on Thanksgiving night and blow leads against the Saints? Were they playing hard for him then? Or was it in the last 8 games when the schedule move towards a better direction, or you faced easier teams and you already were out of playoff contention? Now, if the Falcons were still in playoff contention and were making the 6-2 run, and they got eliminated this past weekend. Okay, I can kind of see that and say maybe they just had a slow start. They were still in the playoff picture. They just got eliminated week 15 or 16. I understand that. They were out of playoff contention when they were 1-7. You had a bye week and you kept them. And this is what I feared with them is that if Dan Quinn kept his job through that bye week, he's going to stay the rest of the year. And I've had some people talk to me and say, no, there's no way they're going to keep him. I'm like, they're going to find a way to retain Dan Quinn and Dimitroff. And this is another word that they used, and McKay as well, consistency. Or you wanted that within the organization. And it ties this a little bit as well. They looked at other franchises. Said, look what Pittsburgh does. Look what the Saints did. They had, after the Saints won the Super Bowl, and notice I said after the Super Bowl, they had several 500 seasons and losing seasons and stuff, and they stuck with them, and now you've seen them kind of come around and become a contender once again. Here is the big difference in those situations. Those teams in Baltimore as well with John Harbaugh, they had some slow years, kind of moving on from Flacco. Now they got Lamar Jackson and look to be a favorite in the AFC. In those situations, the team won the Super Bowl at some point during their tenures. Tomlin won a championship. Harbaugh won a title. Peyton won a title. The Falcons have not done that. They made the Super Bowl and had the worst loss in history of the NFL. Some people want to talk about the Oilers losing that wild card game in the 90s to the Bills. The Giants lost a really bad game in the playoffs one year at San Francisco with the bad snap on the field goal attempt, all of that. And there have been some other bad losses in NFL history. But to blow a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl in the second half, that's bad. And I will say this, and we'll move on to the other hirings and firings. The team has not gotten over that. I know you say that they're professionals and they should get over it and all of that stuff, but I'm not even a fan of the team. I cover the team. I talk to people that are fans for decades, and even myself, I can say when you look at Quinn and you look at Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, it's not right to have this thought, but in the back of your mind, you still think of that Super Bowl. Now, I don't think they should have been fired after that Super Bowl loss. And they did a good job making the playoffs the year after that. But the past two seasons, it's been uninspiring. And then if you wanted to say after last year, when it was a non-playoff team, they made the playoffs the previous 2 years, Super Bowl appearance. You want to give them one more year, I understand that. But after this year, it's got to be done. And if you wanted to not fire him in the middle of the year, I kind of understand that a little bit too, but we're at the end of the season, and you didn't even wait till Monday, today, to make the decision. It's like you were trying to preempt the criticism and try to have it sneak under the radar. Because half people are literally on vacation. All the sports talk people, a lot of columnists, they are, because it's that time of year. So you want to get that news out and do it in a shady way, and that's just not right to your fan base. And what's better? What's going to be different? You have Raheem Morris. He's going to be the defensive coordinator now. When he was your wide receiver, I don't know why he was the wide receiver coach when his career and background has been as a defensive guy. Whatever. And typical Falcons overanalyzing, overthinking things. So he's your defensive coordinator. That's fine. What about the offense? What about special teams, which have been below average for years now, to the point where we've had 3 kickers this year, or 3 place kickers. Now you have the young guy there now. Koo looks like he might be a keeper, but just incompetence on many levels. And the fans are fickle here. The fans fickles everywhere, but especially in Atlanta. The arena, the Mercedes-Benz, tremendous stadium. It's a great fan experience once you get there. But what I fear for the Falcons is that they're going to get off to another slow start, or they're going to have another streak. You got to realize every year they've averaged at least 5-loss losing streak in the past 3 years. That's just how they do. That's how they work outside the Super Bowl year. So you're going to have that happen again this upcoming year. And when do you fire him? How do you get him out of there? I just think that they're going to ride it out and see what happens. And that's not good news for Atlanta Falcons supporters. We've already had some firings take place in the NFL this year, or today. Cleveland parted ways with head coach Freddie Kitchens too much too soon. In 1 year, he went from running back coach to offensive coordinator to head coach. Now, some guys can pull that off, but not him. That just wasn't. And we saw throughout the year the lack of maturity during the press conferences, wearing the Pittsburgh started it shirt. And you just look at that organization, lack maturity from Baker Mayfield, the quarterback, Odell Beckham. We've gone over all these things. You just need a veteran presence in that head coach position. Some guys get away with a young head coach if the structure is there. We've seen it success with a McVay with the Rams and things along those lines. But they really need a Tom Coughlin type. And I don't know if Coughlin's going to coach again. That's another story for another day. But they need that type of guy. Disciplinarian, not put up with crap. And John Dorsey is on the hot seat too, because he's the one that took Mayfield. He's the one that brought in Odell Beckham. You got to question him and what's going on with that. The Giants fired Pat Shurmur after 2 seasons. Similar deal. This organization, you could tell from that draft night when they took Daniel Jones, a very controversial pick at the time. The jury is still out on him. He's had a typical up and down rookie year. But when Gettleman, the general manager, makes all these comparisons and all this to talk, and then Shurmur just sits there silently, you could tell that he did not support that pick at all. And the Giants, they have all the flashy parts. Saquon Barkley, maybe the best running back in the NFL. Jones is I think, could be a competent quarterback. But their line play has been below average for years, and they've refused to address that. I know I've taken some draft picks, selected or assigned Nate Solder from New England as a free agent. None of that has worked out. Defensive line, not working out as well. So Shurmur is just a fall guy, but there's a lot going on with the Giants that's not good. Washington, they fired team president Bruce Allen. Had to happen. He's been there way too long. Similar deal, a lot of incompetence. That Washington franchise, and Ron Rivera signing with them, I'm kind of surprised by that. I would think he'd have better options with that. But Washington, you just look at that team, from the bad ownership to the stadium being quarter full. I talk about Atlanta not having a lot of their fans come to games. Washington's just as bad with that. And Washington is a traditionally strong franchise. I'm old enough to remember the Washington franchise from the 80s and 90s, being a New York Giants fan when I was younger. And they were with Joe Gibbs and all of their play with Bedford at the general manager spot. They were the consistent, stable franchise in the NFL, and it's gone to not so well under Snyder. You have Baltimore right down the road. They're the hot franchise with Lamar Jackson. You have a lot of people converting towards them. And then the name, which I do not say publicly on my show. I slip up and say it once in a while. I don't intend to, but it's hard to keep saying Washington 100 times. But I think the name and the logo has a negative stigma with it right now in 2019, heading into 2020. You could change the name, you could do some alternatives, but I think that, and I know, and that's another debate as far as people say the name's okay, people say it's not, but it's a distraction from what you're trying to achieve as a franchise. So you add all that together, and you have they're not the worst franchise in the NFL. There's some other bad ones, but they're in the top 5 or the bottom 5 in the NFL, and that should never happen to the Washington franchise. Ron Rivera signing with them, I said, is a little bit surprising because I think he'd have better choices, but we'll see what happens there. And then we have some other ones that are kind of floating in the air right now. That's why I recorded the show a little bit later, because I thought there'd be some more news. The Cowboys with Jason Garrett, his contract is up. I can see him coming back. I can see him not coming back. I don't know what's going to happen there. So you got to put it this way with Dallas. They have a top 5 talent base and all the Pro Bowlers, and you look at Pro Football Focus and you see all of the players ranked highly in their positions. You get another 8-8 season. Unacceptable. But we all know how the Cowboys operate with Jerry Jones. He likes a yes man as a head coach. He's Jerry Jones' general manager. He'd be the head coach if he was allowed to. It's just a lot going on with that franchise. So I have no idea what direction they're going to go. And I think as we're recording this right now, Jacksonville is probably not going to keep their interim coach, and we'll see what happens with all of that. But like I said, we're doing another show within the next few days, maybe some more NFL hiring and firing news when we get to it. We're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll break down the college football bowls and the technical state of Georgia athletics here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, welcome back to the Sports Inquirer Show. E. Marcel Pertut here, recording this on December 30th, 2019. I look at the college bowls as far as the playoff games, and the two best teams in the nation emerged from those contests. We look at the first one, LSU 63-28 over Oklahoma in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Tigers led 21-7 at the end of the first quarter. It was over from there. Joe Burrow, I'm trying to think of a better individual season that I've seen from a quarterback, at least since I've been watching football since the 80s. Well, not 80s. That's a little bit rough. I would say maybe the mid-90s to now. I can't think of a quarterback that's had such a good run as Joe Burrow has. I know Tommy Frazier was tremendous at Nebraska. Tim Tebow, he was great at Florida. As Charlie Ward, his Heisman year, he was pretty much unstoppable. Cam Newton with his national championship year and Heisman year with the Auburn Tigers. I think those years are pretty comparable, and I'm forgetting probably a few others. But the man has done everything. He sets records for passing yards and for the overall season. He still has one more game to go. Yards and completion percentages and touchdowns. He's beaten he beat Auburn this year, beat Alabama, Georgia, all top 10 teams. Beat a very solid Oklahoma team. Now, Oklahoma's defense, and this is why Lincoln Riley, you have to question him as a national title head coach, because the offense has been there since he's taken over. We've seen what Mayfield and Kyler Murray's done, and Jalen Hurts had a solid year. But defensively, they bring nothing to the table. And LSU jumped on them immediately. I mean, Burrow, 39-49 passing, 7 touchdown passes, no interceptions, 1 rushing touchdown. Just tremendous effort by him and the team. And as I said, Oklahoma, you just cannot take them seriously as a national title contender with that defense. And I don't know if it's a coaching philosophy or the talent or the coaching, but LSU took advantage of that in a major way. They're going to face Clemson, who were able to defeat Ohio State 29-23 in the Fiesta Bowl. Now, Ohio State had a 16-0 lead in the second quarter, and they had a big touchdown run by Dobbins. He was hobbled all night, and he had a game effort. And we'll get to Justin Fields as well in a moment when we get to later on in our recap. But you could tell Dobbins, he was hurt throughout the game, Fields with his knee. But Dobbins, 174 rushing yards, just in and out of lineup the whole game. Tremendous effort by him. Now, Clemson was able to put it together, had 2 touchdown drives in the final 3 minutes of the half, and were able to cut the lead to 16-14 at halftime. And Trevor Lawrence, who, and I give credit to Kirk Herbstreit during the analysis, where we saw Lawrence run maybe 5 times a game at average throughout the season, just trying to preserve him for this type of moment. But the man has tremendous speed, and so for a man 6'6" and his size and his body type, can move down the field. A 6-7 yard scamper was very impressive as far as his touchdown run. And then Travis Etienne, another rushing touchdown, who I think he is, obviously Lawrence is a major player at quarterback. You talk about the receivers, but Travis is a guy that has been the engine for that squad the entire year. And he was able to get a rushing touchdown there. And he caught the ball as well. And that's where Lawrence's 53-yard TD pass in the third quarter to Etienne gave them the lead. Now, you got to give Ohio State credit because they were able to drive back down the field and retake the lead early in the fourth quarter when Fields was able to hit Olave on a 23-yard pass to make the score 23-21 in favor of the Buckeyes. And what I saw with Fields as well, and this is going to be a very fun debate next year for who's going to be number 1 in the draft between Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, who are literally 20 miles apart in North Georgia. I live in Ackworth. I do my work in Atlanta, but I live in Ackworth. Cartersville, there's Ackworth and there's Kennesaw, which is the city bordering us where Fields is from. And then you head a little bit north, you get Cartersville, which is where Trevor Lawrence is from. So Fields and Lawrence, I mean, they've crossed paths, and you kind of get tired of the story if you live here because we know they've crossed paths in their same class and all that stuff. But it's interesting to see those two guys who are going to be facing each other. Well, you see them in this matchup in the semifinals playing against each other. But Fields, very good job by him though with that to give Ohio State the lead. But Lawrence once again showed his presence and hit Etienne once again for another touchdown pass, 34 yards. Lawrence finished the night with 259 passing yards, 107 rushing yards, both team highs. And I said Etienne had 3 TDs, 2 receiving and 1 rushing in the contest. And Fields, he finished with 320 yards passing and a touchdown. 2 interceptions, and that hurt him in the contest. But as I thought this contest, it may have been the 2 best teams in. Well, LSU I think is the best team in college football, but Clemson and Ohio State aren't too far behind. Oklahoma's kind of the outlier this season as far as the top 4 goes. But yeah, very interesting watching those contests. We're going to end the show talking about Georgia State football. Since our last show, we had signing day take place with Georgia State, and we're going to play some audio from Coach Elliott about signing day. Yes, there we go. Here we go. I found it. So I was able to head down there and speak with Coach Elliott about the signing day festivities and what the team was able to accomplish during the early signing period earlier in December. So we're going to talk. Well, I'll play the audio, and then after that, I'll preview their bowl game, the Nova Home Loans Arizona Bowl, which takes place tomorrow on December 31st. I'll preview that with some audio as well. But let's hear from Coach Elliott, him talking about signing day and what they were able to do as a team.
I think today has been a thrilling day, to tell you the truth. To jumpstart the 2020 recruiting class and signing class it's just been a big day to sign 16 individuals to both help us offensively and defensively, and to pinpoint some of the areas that we have to build depth in our football program. I think we've done that. If you look at the numbers on both sides, you'll say there's a lot of offensive position. I believe 12 of the positions were offensively, and then the other were the defensive. But that's because we're balancing numbers. We want to make sure our numbers are in check. But I think we've made huge strides. I think it's probably one of the top-ranked signing classes that we've had here at Georgia State University. We've met a lot of our needs. We've added a lot of speed, and we feel very, very good about it. It's the first time in Georgia State history that we've actually signed the Gatorade Player of the Year, actually from the state of South Carolina, in Michaeli Colasordo. So that's a huge, huge get. I was kind of going through some of the other Gatorade Players of the Year, and you just look at them, and it's like, they're committed to Oklahoma, they're committed to, Nebraska, or whatever it may be, and then there it is, Georgia State University. And all of these signees that we have today are tremendous athletes, tremendous individuals. I think they're going to make this class a special group.
Third year of the early signing period, just what's the adjustment? Are you starting to get more used to it, and how do you like it just as a coach, especially with combining that with the bowl preparation?
I mean, to tell you the truth, it's nothing to get used to. You recruit so many years in advance now. It maybe just pushes up your signing a little bit and your official visits, but it's how you manage it. So it's not a big deal. Look at our wide receiver position. That's one of the biggest key pieces we needed to add. We added a lot of speed with that, and putting some just playmaking ability there on the perimeter for us. I thought that was critical. When you look at the line of scrimmage, adding the offensive line, I think you've always got to, add the line of scrimmage to solidify what you want to do, and for us offensively is to control that line of scrimmage. So we've added multiple offensive linemen, as you can see, the quarterback position, defensively, inside linebacker and our outside linebacker position, the corner position with Jam Williams, that we got transferring in here from South Carolina. Just all in all, every single one of them has a specific need that we had to address, and they're all here for a reason.
Your second bowl, is your name and the school's name out there now that makes the recruiting a little easier?
Yeah, Georgia State football it's around the Southeast now. I mean, I'm telling you, from the moment we won the All-Nation Cure Bowl in 2017, we got a lot of talk for that win, and just the things that we've done this season. The win over Tennessee was, of course, so special. All of our wins throughout the course of the season, but you walk into these high schools throughout the Southeast and throughout the country, for that matter, and they know Georgia State football and they know our name.
We talked. See, 16 signees. About how many more do you want to get in with the next few days and then into February?
Well, we won't sign any more the next few days, but we'll have 4 for our February signing period. A couple guys we already know who's intact here, and some we're waiting on. But we have a plan in place, and it's pretty solid at this point. That's the great thing about this, really knowing exactly what we have and what we're going to have after that next signing period. We really can focus now on the future classes. That's going to give us an opportunity to scour the state of Georgia, the Southeast, and really pinpoint who we want to really push hard for in this next cycle.
Any position of emphasis that you want to sign in February?
What's that?
Any position of emphasis or you
Yeah,
look for anything
we
particular?
like to add a corner,
Okay.
another offensive lineman, of course, and some of these guys have already told us they're going to be here. So, and potentially a specialist. So, we have those targets out there already.
And that was Shawn Elliott discussing the signing class, and get to our site here, the full presser. I played about half of it. He went for a while there, but make sure you go there, check our site out, and get that there. They moved on from that and are preparing to face Wyoming in the Nova Home Loans Arizona Bowl, which takes place on December 31st, which is tomorrow, New Year's Eve. So I was able to head to practice and speak with Coach Elliott and also with Dan Ellington, the senior quarterback for the team. We'll start with Coach Elliott, and once again, talking about the preparation for the bowl and what the team is preparing for and what would it mean to win that contest against Wyoming.
All right, here with Coach Elliott from Georgia State football. You made it through the holiday break, and now you're back on the practice field. How are things going preparing for Wyoming?
Yeah, you always worry a little bit about coming back off a break, but today's practice I thought was great concentration, good energy, and it was one of the better Mondays that we've had in a while.
Very unfamiliar opponent. Has that just increased the preparation you have to do in this matchup as opposed to your traditional Sun Belt opponents?
Oh, I mean, you break down film, you watch games, you do it all the same way each and every week. You may look at them a little bit more in depth. When I say in depth, maybe more games towards the beginning of the season. But all in all, it's relatively the same.
Yeah, I was looking at their offense. They have a 1,000-yard rusher. Both of you teams think are top 30 in the NCAA in rushing. Just preparing defensively, what we have to do against them, just to limit those opportunities for them.
They're a downhill running football team. They like the power. They like little, some G plays, and then they'll get in their gun, run the power read. So, we just got to be physical. I mean, we can't. The game's going to be won up front. We understand that in both these styles of offenses. So whoever has the dominant offense or defensive line is pretty much going to be the winner of this ball game.
Yeah, every win's important, but just how big would this win be for the program? Be the second bowl win in program history within a short time frame. You always talk about recruiting, building towards 2020 and things like that. Just what would that victory mean for the program to beat Wyoming?
I mean, you look at it, we've never won 8 games here. And to have our second bowl win in 3 years, that says a lot about us for a program that's just been around 10 years. So I think it would be a huge accomplishment, especially for these seniors and, for everything they've put into it. Coming off a season like we had a year ago, and what a great commitment all season, and what's the success we've had on the field this year.
And that last season was a 3-win campaign, and they didn't even make the bowl. So this has been a marked improvement for the team. They currently have 7 wins on the season, are going for an 8th win, which would be a program record for a single campaign. And I said they won the Cure Bowl 2 years ago in 2017. And if they win the they beat Wyoming in the Arizona Bowl, they'll be the second bowl win in 3 years, as they've mentioned. And also, I said the 8 wins, which would be a record for the team. Let's finally hear from senior quarterback Dan Ellington, his thoughts on the bowl and preparations and what the win would mean for him.
Really good. We had a really good practice today. I thought it was our best practice since bowl prep. I think guys are really getting locked in now because the game's Tuesday. But we had a really good practice today. I think everybody was excited to get back on the practice field after a good holiday break, and we're excited to get to Arizona and play Wyoming.
And what about you personally, and then some of the other guys, just physically? What's the extra few weeks off helped you get better for?
Yeah, honestly, for everybody, just get the bumps and bruises out of you. Get back to fresh as possible as you can. And just me, just getting the knee better and getting it back healed. Well, not healed, but, just trying to get as better as it can get.
And what, you done like a mental checklist of some as far as last practices or last time you'll be doing certain things, or have you waited to the end of the game for that type of reflection?
It ain't hit me yet. It's gonna hit me probably when the last practice in Arizona, and It ain't hit me yet, so I'm gonna wait on that.
And how big would this win be for the program for you to get two bowl wins in 3 years, and a record for amount of wins in a year? Just how big is that for you and the program to end with a victory?
First of all, if we win this game on Tuesday, it'll be most wins in school history. So that's big, and just getting another bowl win and in 3 years, that'll be big time. And Coach Elliott only been here 3 years, and he's been to a bowl game 2 out of the 3 years. So, as long as he's the head coach, Georgia State's going to be in great hands.
So that was senior quarterback Dan Ellington talking about the bowl game and preparations for it. But I'll do our next show. We'll have a recap of that contest as well as breaking down some more of the NFL news and notes and everything else. And probably record that show New Year's Day, or probably be New Year's Day because I'm looking at my schedule, just the way things are working out. But as always, thanks for listening to today's show. Really appreciate it. And if you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net. Twitter and Instagram, you can go to Sports Inquirer, that's all one word, and just like us there or follow us, and that'll be a great way to see what we're doing. Facebook, go to our 2 pages, The Sports Inquirer and Sports Inquirer. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud and all of our other podcast mediums. And just look up the Sports Inquirer. It'll come right up, and you can look up and listen to all of our archive shows from the past and shows that we're going to do in the future. Until next time, good fight and good night.